So if you've been with us for any length of time this year, you know we've been working through the book, Practicing the Way, for the majority of the year, and really using the book as a tool to learn a discipleship process to grow in our relationship with God. And last week we introduced the concept of a rule of life. Now, a rule of life, simply stated, is just a plan to follow Jesus. It's a plan we can use to follow Jesus. And the idea is that it doesn't stifle what the Holy Spirit is doing in our lives. Instead, by living by a rule of life, we create more time and space for the Spirit to speak into our lives and give us guidance and direction. And so last week we had this handout, and like I told you earlier during announcements, you've got a copy here if you don't have one already. And the idea is this kind of goes through the rule of life. So going down the left-hand side, we feature 9 different spiritual disciplines that are things we can try to incorporate into our life so that we can grow closer to God. And then across the top there are the different rhythms we have. We have daily, weekly, and the third column is a catch-all for monthly, seasonally, or annually. Because some of these things are things we need to have a daily habit of. Some of them are a weekly habit. Some are less regular than that even. So the idea with this is to help us put together an intentional process of discipleship to grow closer to God. And this week, so if you missed last week's message, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to it online. I got that one up online now because it kind of shapes the framework for what we're looking at for the next several weeks. And it's what we kind of built toward all year long, too. So it's a really important key one. So today we're going to be taking a look at Sabbath, how we can incorporate Sabbath into the rhythm of our life so that we can grow closer to God and follow this special way. You know, several years ago, my family and I had the privilege to go to China. And when we were in China, one of the highlights of our trip was getting to go on the Great Wall of China in Beijing. And as you've seen, the Great Wall of China is huge. It spans a significant amount of territory. So we went to a little part over in Beijing. And as Amy likes to say, she calls it the Great Staircase. Because it is not just a flat wall that goes all the way across. It follows the contour of the hill country there in China. So when you go up on there, you realize you're going up and you're going down, and there's very few places where you're actually walking in a flat, straight line for any distance of time. So this was the very last day of our time in China. We had been there for a little over 2 weeks, and it was our last day. We were actually on the wall that morning and on an airplane that afternoon heading home to America. And the kicker was that I had gotten sick when I was over in China. I got a really bad sinus infection. It took me a while before I found anywhere where I could get like American-style medicine to start helping with it. And so the 2 days before then, for the 48 hours leading up to our trip on the Great Wall, I had gotten about a combined total of 3 hours of sleep. Now, when I was a teenager, you can kind of get away with that. When you're in your 40s, 3 hours of sleep in 48 hours is not good at all. So it really, like, I remember being so exhausted, but I'm like, I am not missing out on this. So I mustered up all my energy and all the adrenaline I could, and we did the Great Wall of China and had a great time doing it. But it was definitely hard on my body, and it was hard on my body because my body had gotten out of rhythm. See, there's a certain daily rhythm built into our bodies where we work and we go, and then we rest. And then you get up the next day and you work and you go, and then you rest. And so that rhythm is built into your body, and when you're younger, you can cheat it more, and as you get older and older, it's harder and harder to cheat that part out of your routine and still get any kind of productivity out of your day. And so that rhythm is something that God built into our beings as humans, but there's another rhythm he built in for us as well, and it goes something like this. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. This comes right out of the rhythm of creation itself, where God created the world in 6 days, and then on the 7th day he rested. I'm going to reread that passage that Alan did for us earlier. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in their vast array. But by the 7th day God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the 7th day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he created from the work. He rested from all the work of creating he had done. That's Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3. Notice it says God blessed the 7th day and made it holy. The word holy literally means set apart, different, special. God worked 6 days and he rested 1 day. And this is the rhythm of the created world that we are a part of. And then he expected his chosen people to follow this very same rhythm. Our second Old Testament reading we did from Exodus chapter 20. This is a part of the Ten Commandments. And if you look at the text of the Ten Commandments, if you turn to Exodus 20 in your Bible, you'll notice something. You'll notice that 30% of the text is this one commandment. I mean, like, do not murder is just a couple words. Sabbath gets 30% of the space of the 10 Commandments. And this is what he has to say. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor the foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore God blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy, set apart, different, special. In the Sabbath, so he gave them this in the 10 Commandments, but then it's like he really, really, really wanted to make sure they didn't miss this, so he gave it to them again. In Leviticus chapter 23, we've looked at that passage over and over again over the last couple of years, because that's where God outlines his ordained holidays for his chosen people. That's where you get Passover. That's where you get Pentecost. That's where we get Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. These things come out of Leviticus 23. But he starts off with the Sabbath as the first holiday he gives them. It's designed to be a weekly holiday. Leviticus 23, verses 1 through 3 says this. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed festivals, the appointed festivals of the Lord, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies. There are 6 days for when you may work, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work wherever you live. It is a Sabbath to the Lord. So God is reiterating to his chosen people over and over again this rhythm that he's built into the creation of the world. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Now, as we look at these passages, the passage from the 10 Commandments and the passage from Leviticus 23, we can pull out a few different things that God tells his people they should do on the Sabbath, and we also see things they should not do on the Sabbath. So the first thing we see in Exodus 20 is he says to remember, or your translation might say observe the Sabbath. So remember or observe the Sabbath. It's something that is supposed to be brought about and remembered and followed and practiced. The second thing he talks about is keeping it holy, making the day different than all the other days, making it special, a special day that is different than the other 6 days of the week. In Leviticus 23, we see the command to rest on the Sabbath, that they are supposed to have a Sabbath day of rest. And he tells them that they should hold a sacred assembly as well. They should have some kind of gathering to focus on God that they do as a community, to come before God as a community. And then the only thing he tells them not to do is work. Now, it sounds simple. Work can be a very broad term. We'll take a little bit closer look at that later on. But he tells them those 4 things to do: to remember or observe the day, to make it holy, to rest, and to have a special assembly. And then he tells them to refrain from working. Think about this, especially if you're an Israelite back then who had just known nothing but slavery before you got out on your own. Every week you have a reminder now that God created everything. Every week you have a reminder that you are no longer a slave. No one can force you to work 7 days a week anymore. In fact, it's a very severely punished sin if you were to violate Sabbath and cause someone else to work when they should not have to. It's because God is building this rhythm into the creation, and he wants his people to follow it. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Let's do a little simple math. I know some of you hate math, but just bear with me. It's simple. I used to love math class. So I was that kid. Anyway, so if you take a Sabbath day every week for 70 years, let's say you start this right as you're an infant and you've somehow figured out how to be an infant and take Sabbath, but actually isn't every day a Sabbath when you're really, really little? For you, not for your parents. Your parents get no Sabbath. So, but let's say you take a Sabbath every week for 70 years. That would mean at the end of 70 years, you had 10 years of Sabbath. 10 full years of Sabbath, 10 full years of rest and connecting with God. What a beautiful picture that is. So as we start down this journey of developing spiritual disciplines, of trying to build disciplines into our life to grow closer to God, we're starting with Sabbath. Now this should be the easiest one, right? I'm telling you, you don't have to do a lot. You don't have to work. You can rest. You can relax. 1 day a week to relax and enjoy your life. 1 day a week to refrain from all work. one day a week to recharge from all the other 6 days that can wear you down and just run you ragged. It should be so easy, but for many of us Christians, it's become very hard. You see, we as Christians have messed this up, and so why have we messed it up so badly? Why have we gotten so far away from the Sabbath practice? After all, it's one of the 10 Commandments. Now, my theory is that it's all Jesus' fault. Now, I say that jokingly. I don't really mean it's Jesus' fault. It's really our own fault. But the reason I say that is this. When you see in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, over and over again, when you see Sabbath come up, it's usually the Pharisees trying to tell Jesus he's doing something he should not be doing. So it's kind of like a showdown between Jesus and the Pharisees. We see Jesus and the disciples picking grain. That was our gospel reading today. And they were telling them that they should not have been able to do what they were doing on the Sabbath. We see Jesus heal a man with a withered hand, and he's condemned for doing this on the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, he heals a woman with a bent back. He heals a man with abdominal swelling. He heals a blind man and commands him to pick up his mat and carry it. Over and over again, when we see Jesus discussing Sabbath in the New Testament, he's fighting against the Pharisees and telling them the restrictions they had put on the day are not correct. And so I think what happens is we have improperly emulated this mindset to the point where we feel like we can do whatever we want on the Sabbath with no restrictions whatsoever. See, it's kind of like a clock with a pendulum, right? The Pharisees, they took the pendulum way too far over in this direction. They took Sabbath rest to the point where healing someone of a non-life-threatening ailment constituted unlawful Sabbath work in their mind. Healing someone of a non-life-threatening ailment they considered to be unlawful Sabbath work. Now, we've kind of taken it, especially in our culture today, over here all the way on the other side, where we can do whatever we want regardless of the command to rest on the Sabbath. We've got a lot of stuff to do in our life after all. We might need that seventh day to get some of it done, so we're just going to keep going and going and going. And I think this must drive God crazy. Can't you just see him up there? See him looking down being like, this will make your life so much better. Why won't you do it? I created you with an internal rhythm. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Why do you constantly fight against the rhythm I have built into you and built into the created world? You see, something I learned a long time ago is Sabbath comes every week, whether you choose to participate or not. It's a blessing that God has held out to you every single week, and we can participate in the blessing, or we can treat it just like any other day. Just like any other day of the week. But this weekly rhythm, work 6 days, rest 1 day, work 6 days, rest 1 day, it is a blessing that God has given to us that we can choose to participate in. Now, there's one group of Christians that really, really gets this right. In fact, they are so adamant about following the Sabbath, they put it in the name of their denomination, right? The Seventh-day Adventist. They are very adamant about following the Sabbath. They have a very high focus on Sabbath. They also have a very high focus on healthy eating in their diet styles. So, and there's an author out there called Dan Buettner, and Dan Buettner wrote a book called The Blue Zones. And the blue zones are basically areas of the world where people tend to live longer than the average person does. And so he identifies these different parts of the world where there's certain populations that live longer than the average person. There's only one blue zone that he highlights in the United States of America, and it's in Loma Linda, California. Now, Loma Linda, California, 1/4 of the population is Seventh-day Adventist. And he found in his study that the Seventh-day Adventists living in Loma Linda, California, lived an average of 10 years longer than the average American. 10 years longer. Remember our earlier statistic about 10 years? 70 years of observing a weekly Sabbath has 10 years of Sabbath. It's almost like following the rhythm of the creation of the world adds years onto your life as we train our bodies to operate the way God has trained our bodies to operate. This is a rhythm that God has built in, and they choose to follow it. And so as a group, they tend to live longer than you and I do because they take this practice so very seriously. So the Sabbath is a weekly rhythm woven in the fabric of creation. A weekly rhythm woven in the fabric of creation. And as philosopher H.H. Farmer said, if you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. Right? If you go against the grain of the universe, you're going to get splinters. So the question then is, there's also a lot of controversy about, like, when is the Sabbath, right? Have you ever heard people have those debates? When is the Sabbath? When should we celebrate it? The actual biblical Sabbath, the Sabbath that God set aside, was Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown. And that's what the Seventh-day Adventists choose to follow. That's what the Jewish people follow to this day. They take their Sabbath on Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown. Now, most of us as Christians, the Sabbath, we kind of shifted to Sunday, what we call the Lord's Day, in recognition of Jesus rising from the dead. And so for most of us as Christians, our Sabbath falls midnight on Sunday to midnight on Monday. And then you've got certain professions like doctors, nurses, pharmacists, police officers, pastors that have to work on the weekends. And so so in these professions, your Sabbath day might be a Wednesday or a Tuesday. So the significance is not getting so fixated on what day it should be. The important thing is to make sure you have a day of the week set aside for rest, a Sabbath day. And if at all possible, have it be the same day every week. Because the Sabbath is designed for that weekly rhythm of work 6, rest 1. Work 6, rest 1. If you want to keep in rhythm, it needs to be the same day every week. And then you're structuring your life around that day so that you can actually rest and relax that day. If you've got some kind of job where it's shift work and there is just no way, having a day a week is better than not having any. But if at all possible, having it on the same day is what's important, because of that rhythm that God has built into us. So how do we change this? How do we get to the point where we take Sabbath and make it a part of our life? How can we bring it into our rule of life? If we're going to take this next part of our chart, if we're going to fill in Sabbath on here, how are we going to fill it out? What do we want to put in our boxes for Sabbath to try to incorporate that into our life? The first thing to do is to figure out what day of the week is going to be your Sabbath. Now, here at Rock and Refuge, you have a unique opportunity, right? Because we meet on the biblical Sabbath simply because that's when we can meet, not because I had some grand vision that we're going to meet on the actual Sabbath. Right? But if you want to make your Sabbath Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown, if you want to make it Saturday morning to Saturday evening, you have the opportunity to do that. Maybe it's Sunday, maybe you work weekends normally, and so it's a certain day of the week. But the first thing to do is pick the day of the week that is your Sabbath and write it in your weekly column. Okay, so in the weekly column, you're like, this is my day. My Sabbath is Saturday, my Sabbath is Sunday, whatever it might be. And then I want to focus on 3 things: gather, remember, rest. Gather, remember, rest. Or, for short, GER. Right? See, you're gonna remember GER when you go home. You might not remember gather, remember, rest, but you're gonna remember GER. All right, so let's focus on the first one, on the G in GER, gather. So, and that is, this is the concept of the sacred assembly, how you're supposed to hold a sacred assembly on the Sabbath. So on your Sabbath, what is your sacred assembly? What is your gathering with other believers? Now, we've kind of built the church around this concept, right? Like the church is designed to be your weekly gathering around other believers. That's designed to be your sacred assembly. So if at all possible, church ought to be your weekly Sabbath gathering. I know some people have jobs where that's not a possibility, and if you're in the boat where like there's just no way to do it on a regular basis, something like a small group with other believers, even if it's coffee and prayer with a friend, something that where every week I'm getting together with someone else in community to grow closer to God and to worship Him. That's the first part. So pick what your gather is going to be and write that down as well. Is your gather church? That's an easy one. Just write it down. If it's not church, what is your gather going to be where you're gathering with other believers to draw closer to God? The second part is remember. Remember. So if you want to set aside a special day of Sabbath, pick one activity that helps you draw closer to God that you want to do regularly. And this is where you have all kinds of freedom here, right? I'm not going to tell you what your activity needs to be. Your activity should fit your temperament in the way that you like to connect with God and the way that He really speaks to you. So maybe you want your remember activity to be spending time in nature because you draw close to God when you're out in the woods, walking on a trail, something like that. Then incorporate that into your Sabbath. Maybe you really like to listen to worship music, and worship music is a way that draws you closer to God. So you turn the radio up louder, you put your earbuds in on Sabbath, and you listen to God and draw closer to Him. Maybe you have some kind of a Sabbath prayer journal. Maybe during the week you just normally pray, but you want to have a journal where you're praying on Sabbath, where you're recording your prayers to God. Maybe there's a certain book that you want to read only on the Sabbath and not on the other 6 days a week. That's your special book, your book where you connect with God when you're reading it this time. And it doesn't have to be the one thing every week. Maybe you want to have a combination of 2 or 3 of these that you can have the freedom to do on any given week, right? Like, I like connecting with God in nature, but I don't like connecting with God in nature if there's freezing rain outside, right? Then I would rather sit inside with a hot cup of cocoa or coffee, right, and connect with God through music or some other way where I can still be warm. So you've got all kinds of freedom in what you do, but think of the things that really draw you close to God, and think to yourself, what if I got a chance to do at least one of those things every single week? Every week I had something in my week that I knew I could look forward to that's going to draw me closer to God, not because it's the thing I'm supposed to do, but it's because it's the thing my heart longs to do. It's what I want to do to draw closer to God. And then let's look at the third component, rest, the rest component. Now, the rest component is a combination of resting from work, so actually abstaining from certain things that are work. And I think it's also a combination of adding in life-giving activities. And so what might be work for me might be rest for you, and vice versa. So this is where, once again, you have a lot of freedom in what you choose, because we're talking about things that connect you to God, or things that just help to re-energize you, or things where you're like, man, I really hate doing this, and I know there's one day a week I don't have to do it. Right? So let's take the work part first. Think of a couple things that you consider work that you can commit to not doing on the Sabbath. Like I said, this is where we've gotten so bad at things, and it's actually life-giving to take some of these things off your plate. So one thing can be, don't perform any tasks for your job on the Sabbath. Now, for some of you, that's easy. For some of you, you have the kind of job where you go in and you clock in, and then when you clock out, you don't have to worry about work till the next day. Others of you don't have jobs like that, and you have jobs where you can constantly be working every single day if you want to. And so for those of you in that place, maybe setting aside and saying, no, one day a week, I'm not sending text, I'm not sending emails, I'm not checking the computer for work stuff. One day a week, I don't have to worry about that. You might decide that you really hate doing the dishes, but you also don't like seeing them piled up. So maybe you want to eat off paper plates on the Sabbath and use plastic forks and plastic cups. That way everything just gets thrown away. It's much easier on everybody. Right? Or maybe you decide you don't even want to cook on the Sabbath. You're going to go out to eat for dinner on the Sabbath. That's going to be your treat for you and your family, is to go out and do that. You can refrain from doing the bills, refrain from doing the laundry. My boys have made it very clear to me that asking them to clean their rooms on the Sabbath is a violation of their Sabbath practice. So, and honestly, as a father, there's almost nothing you love more when they throw it back at you and you're like, they're right. 6 days a week you must clean your room, but the 7th day thou shalt not clean thy room, and it is okay. So, another suggestion is refraining from buying and selling on the Sabbath. So refraining from going out and shopping or anything like that. And this is going to be hard to do if your other thing is to eat out every week. But for some people, for some of us, the idea of refraining from that means that we're not adding into commerce. So if enough people did that, then people wouldn't have to work on the Sabbath. So, and another idea that I read out of a book was to observe a digital Sabbath, where you turn off your phone, you don't turn the TV on, you don't turn the radio on, and you just kind of take all your electronic devices and set them aside for a day so that you can recharge in different ways. And then let's look at our life-giving activities. So after we add some things in there that are work that we want to refrain from, let's pick at least one life-giving activity. And this can be kind of anything. This kind of broadens the spectrum, but just things that you really enjoy that you can build into your Sabbath that you can look forward to. Whether it's playing video games, going on a date with your spouse, setting aside a time for just to enjoy beautiful things such as poetry, art, music, things like that. Getting together with a close friend, having family time, taking a nap. Let me tell you, a Sabbath nap is a guilt-free nap. It's awesome, awesome. Or just spending time in quiet. But what is the thing that you do that you really enjoy? Maybe it's going out in your garden, right? Maybe for some people, going out in the garden and working is work. Maybe for you, it's not. Maybe that's life-giving, and you want to go out and just work in the garden and help out there. Like, whatever it is, incorporate some of those things into your life. So as I take mine, because I'm trying to go along and do what I say, so this is mine filled out here, which you're not going to be able to read, so I'll read it for you. So my day of the week is Sunday, which is interesting, but the reason is because churches work for pastors, right? So every pastor I know has a different day than the day their church meets where they take their Sabbath, because as much as I love to enjoy it and draw close to God, for me as a pastor, churches still work as well. So my day of the week right now is, while we meet on Saturdays, is Sundays. And my gather is attending church, and I know that's not on Sunday, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast for this particular position. So my day of the week is Sunday. My weekly gathering is church. My remember activity is to do an extra long devotional time with God. That's what I have set up for that. And the beautiful thing is, once again, there's a lot of freedom in this. It's not like I need to have an extra long prayer time or an extra long Bible reading time. Like, I can pick whatever's kind of resonating with my heart that week as my extra long time with God. But somehow, some way, I'm going to spend more time with God that day in devotional time than I normally do on another day. And then my resting from work is that I'm going to do no church work on Sabbath, right? So those of you that have gotten text or emails from me on Sundays, you shouldn't be getting them anymore. And if you do, you are welcome to write me back and say, why are you sending this to me on Sunday? All right, you can hold me accountable. It's okay. So I'm going to take one day a week, because once again, pastoring is one of those kind of jobs like when I was in sales where you could work 7 days a week very easily. So I'm going to refrain from that on Sundays. And I'm also refraining from going to the grocery store. Now, maybe you love to go to the grocery store. Maybe you just love to browse and see all the fun stuff in there. For me, the grocery store is a chore. And so I'm going to do my best to buy all my things I need 6 days a week. So one day a week, I know I do not have to go to Wise and buy anything for myself. So those are part of my weekly rhythms for rest. The other thing I decided to do is I added in a monthly one. I wanted to try this idea of a digital Sabbath, and it's not something that I'm ready to do every week, but maybe once a month, turn off my phone, don't get on the computer, don't watch television, and take a day to just connect and recharge without any of those types of things. So I'm going to try it once a month and see how it works. And then my life-giving activity is family time, making sure that I've got some family time incorporated into my Sabbath each and every week. So that's my list. Those are the things that I'm committing to work on and trying to do. What about you? What are your commitments? What are you going to do so that you can live out right? So that you can gather, remember, and rest one day a week. So how do you want to build the discipline of Sabbath in your life? Like I said, there's a lot of freedom in this. There's a lot of freedom to connect with God through your temperament. And you can choose to do that because the blessing is there for you. Or you can choose to treat it like any other day of the week, and while some people around you are being blessed, you're just going through the motions, doing 7 days a week worth of the same kinds of things. But think about it. One day a week to rest and recharge. One day a week to draw closer to God in a special way. Work 6 days, rest one day. Work 6 days, rest one day. Now, this takes some preparation. As I've been working on Sabbath in my life over the past several years, I found that it takes advanced preparation. In order to do it well, you need to prepare for it the other days. Actually, in the Bible, there's a word for the day before the Sabbath. They call it the day of preparation. The day of preparation, because you get the things done you need to do that day and the things you would need to get done the next day so that you can enjoy your Sabbath. But think about it. We're already used to this with holidays. Think about Christmas. Think about all the preparation that goes into your Christmas celebration every year. The decorations that come out, the gifts that get purchased, the food that gets cooked. For some of you, you travel distances to go see family or friends. Think of all the preparation we do so that one day is a special day. And think about your other holidays. Maybe your other holidays don't take as much work as Christmas, but Thanksgiving, 4th of July, different holidays you celebrate, a lot of times we have some amount of advanced preparation to help make the day special so that we can do different things on that given day. So for me, that means that on Saturday, I need to be really, really certain that I got everything I need from the grocery store for Sunday so that I don't have to run back out. So whatever your things are, whatever the work you're refraining from on Sunday, you need to make sure you're preparing ahead of time for that during the week so that you can live that out. Now, the thing is, if you start to really live by taking a Sabbath, if you really allow yourself the privilege of one day a week to say no to work and say yes to rest and relaxation and connecting with God, you're going to look different than the people around you because this is a countercultural practice. It's a countercultural practice. In a world full of busyness, consumerism, and go, 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 you're going to look different than the other people around you. And think about it for a minute. Think about businesses. Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby, even Miller's Market in our local area here, all close on Sundays. The first two, Chick-fil-A and Hobby Lobby, literally sacrifice over $1 billion a year by operating 6 days a week instead of 7 days a week. But why do they do it? Because they feel that every one of their employees deserves a Sabbath day of rest. And what they're actually doing, they're actually giving their business a Sabbath. Their business works 6 days, their business rests 1 day. So they take the concept of Sabbath and apply it to their business. And by applying it to their business, they bless all their employees as well by giving them a guaranteed day off every single week. And it's the same day off every single week, so they can work that rhythm into their cycle of work 6 days, rest 1 day. Work 6, rest 1. We're designed with that rhythm in mind, that work 6 days, rest 1 rhythm. We can choose to ignore it, or we can listen to God and practice this. Like I said, the Sabbath comes every week. Do you want it to be a part of your life, or do you want to go on living without it? Jesus in John chapter 10, verse 10 said, "The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." The Sabbath is life-giving. The Sabbath is one of the practices we can do to draw closer to God, to have the full life that Jesus was talking about and that he modeled for us while he was here. So I hope you won't ignore this gift. I hope you will choose to live out the rhythm of the created world, to work 6 days and rest 1 day, and in doing so, draw closer to God. Let's pray. God, I thank you for the gift of the Sabbath. God, you didn't need to do that. You could have put us in a situation where every day is the same and we're just going and going and going. But you chose to give your people something different. You chose to give your people a day a week to rest, to recharge. And you didn't just ask them to do something you hadn't done yourself. You modeled it for us with the creation of the universe. And now you give us that opportunity to do what you did. We get to do what the God of the universe did, and we get to do it every single week. God, I pray that you would help us, because I know that this can be a very difficult concept for us with the way we tend to live our lives today. So I pray for each and every person here, each and every person listening online, that you would give us the desire and the motivation to pursue Sabbath, God, to pursue growing close to you in this really special way, so that we can love you and we can feel your presence and we can live out the rhythm that you built into creation. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. Work 6 days, rest 1 day. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.